The LA Kings look to get back on track and get a home win. It's Kings versus Coyotes Part 1. We'll talk about that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're also on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Well, the LA Kings are back in action tonight against the Arizona Coyotes, the first of two meetings with the Coyotes this week, tonight in LA, then Friday in Tempe. The Kings come in with a record of 2-2-1, facing an Arizona team that is 3-2 on the season. LA coming off a 4-2 loss to the Bruins at home on Saturday. The Coyotes knocked off the Ducks on Saturday as well. 2-1 was the final. As for the Kings, the question I had coming into today's game was there anything that we saw in Saturday's loss to the Bruins that would warrant a lineup change? And my answer was no. They're just 5 games into the season. I think it's not really enough time to start mixing things up. It's not like the Kings are off to a great start. They're not off to a terrible start. Just so far, so good for LA. And let the players continue to adjust to playing together. Now, we know the top line of Kopitar, Kempe, and Byfield. They're used to each other, you would think, at this point. But there are some new elements on the other lines. Arthur Kaliev playing on the Danault line. With Trevor Moore. Obviously, you've got the PL Dubois line with Alex Laferriere and Kevin Fiala, and Trevor Lewis inserted on that fourth line with Blake Lizotte and Carl Grundstrom. And while I wouldn't say the Kings were great against the Bruins, I certainly don't think that they played poorly enough to warrant any kind of lineup shuffle. And according to friend of the show and LA Kings insider Zach Dooley, the Kings will, in fact, go with the exact same lineup we have seen for the last several games, and that would include in the last game against the Boston Bruins. I'm still wondering a bit why defenseman Tobias Bjornfot hasn't gotten more than just one game so far this season. I'm not saying I'm necessarily unhappy with Andreas Englund playing on the third pairing on that left side with Jordan Spence, but if you've got Bjornfot up in the rotation, why not have him in the lineup every now and then? Maybe have he and Englund again, kind of rotate on that left side until one of them maybe asserts themselves, or at least you have, if there is some sort of injury, Bjornfot a little bit more ready to go. I don't really get the reasoning why he's just there on the roster, but not really doing much. Of course, he is practicing with the team, and there's that. But I don't think that, like I said, I'm not unhappy with Andreas Englund per se. He does bring a physical quality to the lineup. We've seen him get into a couple of fights, which obviously Tobias Bjornfot's not going to do that. But I wouldn't say his play has blown me away either. I think that it would probably benefit the Kings to, again, get Tobias Bjornfot in the rotation, get him ready in case he's needed. But so far, that has not been the case. Now, there is one big lineup change tonight for the Kings, and it comes in net, where Phoenix Copley is going to make his second start of the season after Cam Talbot had started 3 consecutive games. And I thought all 3 pretty good outings by Cam Talbot. He won 2 of them. This is the first outing for Phoenix since his only start of the year, which was not a great start for him. He allowed 5 goals in regulation, and then I believe it was 3 of the 9 shooters to score in the shootout in what was a 6-5 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. Those 5 goals came on just 17 shots against for Copley, and that save percentage is .737, and that is awful. Now, it's only been 1 game. You certainly would expect those numbers to improve after tonight's game. At least we certainly hope so. If not, then the Kings maybe have to make a decision if they want to bring up David Rittich and put Phoenix Copley down in the AHL. Again, I'm just saying, if it's worse than it was against Carolina, maybe you got to think about that. The Kings do need a reliable number 2 goaltender, because they're going to need to take some of the load off of Cam Talbot's shoulders at some point. He's 36 years old. I don't know where he stands as far as age and number 1 goalie, if in fact you believe he is the number 1 goalie right now for the LA Kings. As far as the number of starts, it would seem to indicate that. But again, it is still early. Head coach Todd McClellan was asked specifically if Cam Talbot had kind of wrestled that number 1 job away at this point, and he said no, that it's still too early to make any kind of assessment as far as that goes. But again, obviously Talbot has gotten the majority of starts. We're seeing Phoenix Copley for only the second time so far on the season, so you can draw your own conclusions from that. As for Copley, just his second career start against Arizona, his first start against the Coyotes as a member of the LA Kings. He is 1-0 in his career against the Coyotes. That start came several seasons ago when he was a netminder for the Washington Capitals. As far as LA, they were 2-0-1 last season against Arizona. Jonathan Quick was in net for all of those 3 matchups against the Coyotes. For Copley tonight, obviously he just needs to do what he did for the majority of last season: make the routine saves, stop the shots you're supposed to stop, and give your team a chance to win. As for the Kings, they obviously need to support Phoenix Copley. Now, they did it in the last game with 5 goals, but obviously they're going to need to score more than 2 goals, which they did in their last game against the Boston Bruins. 2 goals, probably not enough, frankly, for the Kings to win consistently. Not saying they're a bad defensive team, not saying they have bad goaltending, but in the league these days, 2 goals usually not enough to get you a win. 3 or more, and you're in decent shape. And that's kind of been the case for the Kings so far this season. When they've scored goals, they've won, and when they haven't, they haven't. So we have talked about it before as far as what we want to see the Kings do in front of Phoenix Copley. And I need to see them be more effective on the power play, especially that number 1 power play unit. Kings were 1 for 6 with a man advantage against Boston last time out. They're ranked 16th right now in the NHL on the power play, operating at 17.4%. The good news for the Kings is they are getting power play chances. 23 times they've had a power play this season, but just 4 goals so far. So they're getting, on average in their 5 games, 4.6 power plays per game. That's good. But again, only 4 power play goals, and only 1 has come from that number 1 power play unit. I'd like to see the Kings have a bit more of a shot mentality tonight against Arizona. I think they've been getting shots on goal, okay. But I think they're still kind of looking for that pretty play. And I think making the extra pass is okay, but when you know it's not there, that's when it's time to at least get a shot on net and see what happens. Hopefully that shot mentality will carry over for guys like Adrian Kempe. And I think in particular, Kevin Fiala. Now, Kempe does have the 1 empty net goal, but Fiala is still looking for his first goal of the season. Now, he does have 7 assists, which is great. But I think he still needs to look for his shot a little bit more. It's fine to be a playmaker, but Kevin Fiala needs to be a playmaker and a finisher for the LA Kings. He has that kind of skill set, and I think that's what they expect from him. We've seen part of that so far. We haven't seen the other part of it yet this season. Seeing it tonight would be nice. I think the Kings also need to get a home win. They are one of only 4 teams currently in the NHL going into tonight's action that has yet to get a home victory. 0 for 3 so far. I guess 0-2-1 at Crypto.com Arena. Last season, the Kings had 26 home wins. That was the most of any team in the Pacific Division, including the defending Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights. They were tied for the most home wins last season of any Western Conference team. Them and Winnipeg had the most home wins last season. So the Kings need to get back to making home ice advantage an advantage. Now, to be fair to the Kings, their opponents so far this season at home have a total record of 13-3. 2 of them haven't lost yet, at Colorado and Boston. But still time for the Kings to get back on track and get a win on home ice. We're going to take a look at the Arizona Coyotes, and is no news good news for an injured LA King? We'll talk about that next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. I don't, because I use Game Time, and they are fast and easy when you buy your tickets, and you can get your tickets not just to sports, but music, comedy, and theater events near you. I'm going on vacation next week to New York, and by the way, I'm still doing the show while I'm on vacation. But I'm going to see an NHL game at Madison Square Garden. It's one of my bucket list things I'm going to get to cross off. And I used Game Time to buy my tickets to see the Rangers play the Carolina Hurricanes. The app is very easy to navigate and use. They've got killer last minute deals, all in prices, and the best price is guaranteed with Game Time. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. I love how you can view your seats before you buy them. It takes the guesswork out of it. All in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps on the app. Just download that Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And Kevin Fiala scores a hat trick and the LA Kings win the Stanley Cup. Sounds good, right? You know what else sounds good? You winning 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app as the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. Alex DeBrincat of the Detroit Red Wings on fire right now. He's leading the NHL in goals with 8 points with 12. How hot is he going to stay? Would you bet on him to stay hot, or is luck going to run out for Alex DeBrincat? Well, with the Sleeper app, you can pick more or less based on goals, assists, points, saves, and more. And Sleeper offers 100 times payouts, 100 times. And although we love the NHL, it's not just about hockey. You've got Major League Baseball playoffs going on right now, the World Series on the verge of being set, NFL's in full swing, so is college football, and the NBA is starting tonight. Now's a great time to get in on all the amazing sports action. Make the right picks, and you could win big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's LOCKEDON NHL. Use the Sleeper app. Terms of use for details. The LA Kings face the Arizona Coyotes tonight, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast of the LA Kings on SiriusXM. Use the SXM app and search LA Kings. I do want to take a look at tonight's opponent, the Arizona Coyotes. Kings are going to be facing them again, back-to-back games. And the two teams got a pretty good look at each other. I'm sure you remember in the preseason squaring off in a pair of games in the Global Series in Melbourne, Australia. The two teams split their 2 meetings down under. Coyotes are off to a decent start, 3-2 on the season. We talked about the win over the Ducks in their last game. They also have posted wins this season over the Devils and Blues, while they lost to the Rangers and the Islanders. Tonight will be the Coyotes' 5th road game in 6 games so far this season. They will be back home to host LA on Friday. Arizona is coached by Andre Tourigny. This is his first time as an NHL head coach, not his first season, but this is the first team he's had a chance to coach. And pretty good reviews as far as Andre Tourigny. He is a guy who seems to have his teams always prepared. And regardless of the Coyotes maybe being not as powerful from their lineup standpoint, they seem to compete hard night in and night out. They do have an elite player on their roster. His name is Clayton Keller. Leads the team in goals with 3, tied for the team lead in points with 6, along with Nick Schmaltz. Former LA King Sean Durzi will be taking on his old team in a regular season game, and looks like he's fit in pretty well with Arizona on the early season. He is their top scoring defenseman right now with 4 points, including 2 goals. And keep an eye out for highly touted rookie Logan Cooley. You might remember him in that Global Series matchup. He had a spectacular goal against the LA Kings in the preseason. According to Kings insider Zach Dooley, Connor Ingram will be getting the start in net for Arizona. This will be his 3rd start of the season, as he is sharing the net, trading off in every game with Kirill Velmelka, who we will see Friday against the Kings. As far as Ingram goes, he's 1-1 on the season. He's allowed 4 goals on 54 shots against. That is a solid .926 save percentage. This will be Ingram's first career start against the Kings. Now, he did face LA in relief last season, ended up being the losing goalie in the shootout. Now, the Kings clearly shouldn't take any opponent for granted. But that being said, if we're going to talk about how tough the Kings' schedule has been to this point and maybe cut them some slack for losses to Colorado and Arizona, then we need to expect more from them against lesser competition. And Arizona is improved this season, and they do play hard, but they were one of the worst teams in the NHL last season. They're not expected to be a playoff team again this season. I think it's fair to say the Kings have the better lineup, have the better talent, but they still need to put the effort forward, execute on the ice, and get a couple of wins in a couple of games coming up against Arizona. We will see as they get their first chance tonight against the Coyotes. So they say no news is good news, but what's going on with Victor Arvidsson? We have still heard nothing about his injury. Now, we do know that GM Rob Blake said in a recent interview that it looked like Arvidsson was going to need back surgery, but we haven't heard anything about any details. Has he had the surgery? If he had the surgery, did it go well? What's the timeline for a recovery? Now, the NHL is notorious for being very stingy when it comes to injury news, but that's usually on a kind of a game-by-game, night-by-night basis, the lower body, upper body kind of a thing, not want to revealing too many details. But GM Rob Blake already said that Arvidsson was probably going to have surgery. But again, to this point, we still don't know. Has he had the surgery? Did it go well? And again, what is a timeline for him to return? Now, he's on long-term injured reserve right now. So the Kings obviously have made some roster adjustments because of that. He can stay on long-term injured reserve as long as is necessary. And perhaps the Kings are being vague on this because they want to keep him on LTIR until the playoffs. Now, remember, he did have surgery on his back for a herniated disc. Season before last, he was hurt for the playoffs, didn't play that first time around against the Oilers. And then he ended up missing 5 months, came back right before the start of last season. And I know I brought this up before, but it's not out of the realm of possibility if, in fact, he's having a similar back surgery, which reports are he is, that he would be out until about the time the playoffs are going to get going. Now, you're assuming if it is a 5-month recovery for this back issue, and then, of course, he's going to need some time back on the ice. He's not going to just jump right back into it, whether that means a conditioning stint in the AHL, whether that means just practice time with the Kings before he is ready to go, especially in playoff competition, which is obviously at another level. So, again, I don't think it's too much of a conspiracy theory to think that the Kings may be looking at this to have Victor Arvidsson join them for the playoffs and get a big boost come playoff time. And I know that I brought this up before because other teams have done it. We've seen Tampa Bay do it with Nikita Kucherov. We saw Vegas do it last year with Mark Stone. Several years ago, Patrick Kane did this for the Chicago Blackhawks. It's not something that is hasn't been utilized by other teams, and successfully so. And some people have pointed out on some of the YouTube episodes, and understandably so, that, hey, this is a contract year for Victor Arvidsson. He wants to get back on the ice to earn a new contract for next season. But if he is, in fact, going to have back surgery and he's going to be out long-term, then that's out the window. If he's legitimately going to miss months and months and months, then I think that ship has kind of sailed on him looking to get out on the ice to earn that next contract. Now, maybe this could also work ultimately in the Kings' favor as well. If Arvidsson misses most of the year and is able to come back just for the playoffs, maybe he would be more open to just getting a 1-year kind of a prove-it deal from the LA Kings for another season. And then he can show other teams that he is, in fact, healthy. And if it's not with the Kings after next year, then maybe it's another team. But I think that could be a possibility for the Kings. This could be a real win-win for LA. Now, do we want Victor Arvidsson on the ice right now? We'd love to have that. Yes. I think he's part of the reason why that Kings number 1 power play unit is not producing the way they need to. But again, I think that circumstances may have favored the LA Kings, but again, we don't know. This is all speculation until we actually get some definitive word from the LA Kings. But to this point, we haven't gotten anything. Still don't know if he's had the surgery. If the surgery, what was it? What's the timeline? Was it successful? So until we hear something, then it leaves us open to speculating as to what's going on with Victor Arvidsson. But I think when there's smoke, there's fire. And I think there is some smoke around Victor Arvidsson and the idea that he's going to be out, if it is a similar surgery to last time, going to be out 5 months, maybe 6 months, and could be ready to go in time for the playoffs. And that could be a big boost for the Kings, and what it means for Victor Arvidsson's future as far as him re-signing with LA, that remains to be seen. But it is interesting that we have not heard anything about Victor Arvidsson and his update health-wise. Maybe we'll hear that soon. Maybe we won't. Are you ready for Frozen Frenzy? Do you know what Frozen Frenzy is? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. We'll talk about it next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, snap into the action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That is $200 in a bonus bet, win or lose. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is easy to use. There is a wide range of betting options, including point spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And obviously, we love to bet on the NFL, at least I do. But what about the NHL? Yeah, you can do that too on FanDuel. Our LA Kings are favored tonight to beat the Arizona Coyotes. LA is giving a goal and a half. Over-under for the game is 6.5 goals. Want to place a bet on our Kings to win by more than a goal and a half? Think the game will have more or less than 6.5 goals? Well, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet all season long on the NHL and the NFL as well. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Now, I'm not sure if you know it. Maybe you do, and maybe you're excited about it, but the LA Kings are a part of Frozen Frenzy tonight. Now, this is different than Frozen Fury, which is the preseason game in Salt Lake City, Utah. Coming up tonight, and it's already going on right now, every team in the NHL is playing a game tonight, which is very rare. The NHL decided to schedule every team in the NHL tonight 16 games, and they've staggered the start times so that none of the games are starting and hopefully finishing at the same time. And of course, the LA Kings are a part of this, playing at home against the Arizona Coyotes at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. So yeah, I'm not sure what the NHL is doing here. I mean, I get that they're trying to get some publicity out of this, and it's worked a little bit. Some people are like, oh, all the teams are playing tonight. That's interesting. But unfortunately for the NHL, there is opening night in the NBA tonight. Now, it's only 2 games, but still, you've got some marquee teams involved, including the LA Lakers. Golden State Warriors are playing as well. And Major League Baseball playoffs have a game 7 tonight. The Phillies and Diamondbacks, winner take all game to see who decides to advance and face the Texas Rangers in the World Series. So there is some competition for eyeballs tonight. Maybe this would have been a better decision to do on a weekend, where if you are a hockey fan in general, like me, I actually do like to watch other NHL games that don't involve necessarily the LA Kings. But if it was on a weekend, and I could see, you've got the time to maybe sit on your couch all day long, watch games from morning to night. But obviously that's not the case on a weekday. And I know these things can't necessarily just be scheduled whenever you want. There's availabilities of arenas and things like that. But I don't know. As a hockey fan, it wasn't like I was necessarily looking for this. And like I said, I'm doing this show right now. I'm watching the Kings later on tonight. So it's not like I'm a huge hardcore hockey fan. I'm not really watching this. So, and it also, they've got the NHL had 1 game on Monday, and then they've got all these games today. And then they're having 1 game on Wednesday. Wouldn't it be better served to just keep doing what you normally do and have, 4 or 5 games one night, 4 or 5 games the next night, and make it more accessible? Because even if you are a huge NHL fan, are you going to be able to watch all these games? Are you just going to kind of monitor them, these stagger starts? I don't know. It's an interesting idea, and Lord knows the NHL, needs to think outside the box to try and get eyeballs, to try and get people interested in the product. And I guess this does that to a certain extent, but we'll see how it goes. They're trying something different. The Frozen Frenzy tonight across the NHL, every team in the league in action on the same night, including our LA Kings. So we'll see how the ratings are. We'll see what the interest is. We'll see how it goes. But the NHL trying something different, and we'll see how it works out. Speaking of the LA Kings, again, they are taking on the Arizona Coyotes tonight, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. Catch every moment of the hometown broadcast of the LA Kings on Sirius XM. Go to the SXM app and search LA Kings. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, tomorrow we'll obviously have a full recap and analysis of the Kings' hopefully victory over the Arizona Coyotes. I do want to let you know, coming up on Thursday, that LA Kings radio and TV analyst Jim Fox scheduled to join us, talk about the LA Kings so far on the season. Always love to get Foxy's thoughts on the Kings. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll have another Kings fan feedback show. Also preview a big game coming up on Saturday as the Kings will be taking on the currently undefeated defending Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights here in Los Angeles. If you would like to email us and be interactive with the show on our feedback shows, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You're also welcome to post your thoughts on the YouTube episodes in the comment section as well. And we'd love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media. You can follow us on X or Twitter, or the site formerly known as Twitter. Also on Instagram as well. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.